Okay. Okay. So I'll start, I guess, with Ramban. I'll read through fast just to get an idea. The first part of the Ramban quotes the Rambam in the mitzvah of tefillah. And then, see, he points out that the Rambam Mishnah Torah, the Rambam in Sefer mitzvahs doesn't have a time for the mitzvah, but in Mishnah Torah he says b'chol yom. So he quotes the Rambam here, called it Divrei Rav, ve'ein haskama b'zeh, shekvar be'u chachamim b'gemara tefillah d'Rabbanan, כמו שאמרו בשליש של ברוכos, william balkeri שקורא קריאת שמע מבורך המוזרים לאחרוב ואינו מספר והל הטעם בזה אל קריאת שמע וברכת המוזרים דרייסה תפילה דרבנן. So here we don't know anything, we don't know that much, because it could be, for each tefillah, there's certainly a Rabbanan. So it's not such a good proof for anything. We only will read Safek called Krishma, Safek loy called Krishma Chayzer v'Kare. Ksar called Krishma, Safek Yispal, Safek loy Yispal, and Chayzer v'Yispal. The Krishma, the Raisa, Tefillah the Rabban. So it could be a singular tefillah, we don't know. Begmor Sukkah, Omu, Gabik Tefillah, Desnan, V'Mischilu Ein Mafsikin, V'Hikshu Milulov, Tiktoni Noitel al Shulchanoi Almo Mafsik Veishiv B'derech Teimo my kusha Hod Reis Hod Rabbanon. So again, a peculiar tefillah might be the Rabbanon. But Fari'inu Loi B'Hilchos Tefillah She'omo Shechayiv Odom Min HaTorah B'Tefillah B'chol Yom Ela She'ein Minyan HaTefillos ולא משנה תפילוס מן התורה. וכך כוסף בזה אמר ומצווה סיריס שזמני התפילה, in other words, he's saying in mitzvah Yud, he says זמני תפילה אינו מן התורה, אלא חייבס התפילה עצמו היא מן התורה. Okay. So it says, וגם זה איננו נכון, בעיניי, שבלקרי מבורך על המוזן לאחרוב, יבנה שהוא מן התורה, ואינו מספר עד שיתבו, אפילו עומד כמה יומים בקריה. So he says, Balkari could be for many days, and if he's supposed to pray every day, he says in Mishnah Torah, it doesn't work. The Gemara should have said, for the Balkari does mitzvahs deraisa. V'oid shemisha nenas v'oisparo b'shachris u'v'mincha u'mistapik b'atzmoi sofik his palil sofik loy his palil im kain lefi dvorov shalarav tzorch larzo hispalo but poskali olam b'chol sofik b'tfilo sheinu choyzo mispalo minei shid rabbonon. Okay, so again, v'im eineno mitzvah b'chol yom mosai tiyah chayva hazois. So he says, even if you accept what he says in Sefer mitzvahs that there's no time constraints, mosai tiyah chayva hazois hamutelis aleinu min haTorah sheyispal yom echod b'shana, maybe it's one time a year. Oh, b'chol yemei chayei pamach, maybe it's one time his whole life. So we have no clue about anything. And why should there be this time or not that time? So it means he has to daven once. See, we don't understand that it should be limited to time and what the time is and what's going on. We have Yehuda, the mitflos in Yoim and the tflos in Yoimim. Having mitbal is a very interesting guy. Rabbi Yehuda used to daven once every 30 days. Lefi shoya oisik b'teira. V'soymech Al ma she'amru chaverim shoyu iskim b'teira mafsikin l'tchishma ve'im mafsikin l'tefila because shehi d'rabbanan l'olam. So what, every 30 days? The reason why I stopped, because every 30 days is deraisa. How does this all work? When's the deraisa, El vadai kol in atfila in ochayva klau. Elo he mimidas achesed. Okay, so here he says, once tefillah is the rabbanon, he says, what conclusion you draw? There's no mitzvah of tefillah, but the whole institution of tefillah is a chesed. Eino choiva, avo hu mimidas chesed, habere yis'ale oleinu, sheshomeya v'oine b'chol koleinu elo. They listen to our tefillah, and it's a het. There's no chiyuv, there's no mitzvah. It's a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, that, let's leave this part aside. He just points out that, somehow you're going to have to say when you're supposed to do it. Once in your life, and it's very unclear. It seems to him just ridiculous to have a mitzvah which you have no idea of when and how you're supposed to do it. And the Ramba actually says daily, which he claims is impossible from the Gemara by Balkeri. Elavade calling in tefillah in ochayva avuhum midas chesed abere isale v'olei shemei letefillah v'oine b'chol koleinu elov. Vika kosev. Now things get interesting. This is the beginning. Okay. Vika kosev uleovde b'chol levavchem, which what the Ram quotes. That's the first quote he's quoting from the Sefer, Loshen Sefer, uleovde zay tefillah. So the question is, if the Sefer says zay tefillah, what is this pasuk talking about? V'ika kosev, he says, this pasuk is not talking about tefillah. But what is it talking about? Because the pasuk says, "Uli'ovdei b'chol levavchem." What's b'chol levavchem? Mitzvahs aseh shetia kol avodeseinu lokel yis'ale b'chol levavenu. Who means every mitzvah we do, we have to do it with our full heart. Kloima, b'kavona ritzuya shleimo, ritzuya and shleimo. Lishmo, the mitzvah should be l'shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ube'ein hero ra, without any hero of dvorim that are not right. Okay, what lo shenasa mitzvahs b'lei kavono, or we should make two mitzvahs without kavono. O ala sofek, ulai yesh bohem toeles. Maybe maybe there is something to it. Maybe there's not. Let's do it on sofek. No. So even though the whole discussion of kavona, mitzvah tzrichas kavona, ain't tzrichas kavona, that's only b'di'evet. But the chatchila, and there's a mitzvah to have kavona for all mitzvahs and beyond kavona lotzes. Kavona shleimo, kilu letzuya, l'shmo yisale. Kinyan, what's Kinyan? After Eis Hashem Elokecha b'chol levov b'chol nafshecho. There also it says L'ovdu b'chol levavchem b'chol nafshechem, and thereby Avos Hashem it says b'chol levov b'chol nafshecho u'b'chol modecho. She'amitzvah hi la'avos Hashem b'chol leiv v'leiv. U'shenistakein ba'avosai b'chol levavchem even till sacharos nefoshes b'nafshenu. So Here he interprets there the Av is Avos Hashem. Here in Vivav Uliovdei means Avodas HaMitzvahs, and Avodas HaMitzvahs should be B'chol Levavchem. What it means? What does it mean? B'chol Nafshechem. We don't know. In Ramban, he's proving from Klishma. I mean, from Avos Hashem, but we have to know what Nafshechem is. If you take this seriously, there it's B'chol Misha Mamona Chova Gufa, but here he's not giving up Mamona and Gufa according to the Ramban, so we don't know. Okay, Beseder. So that is Ika Kosu. It's without the Sifri, L'cheira. It's their chapshat. That's what we think pshat and posik is. Uleovder b'chol levavchem b'chol nafshechem. Umash dosu b'sifri. So here's the problem. Comes the Ramban, says the posik is talking about asiyas hamitzvahs, not about tefillah at all. And asiyas hamitzvah with kavana l'tzuya. However, the Sifri says Ula of the Zutfila, and also say Ula of the Zutalmud. Ula of the Umashidosha Besifri, Ula of the Zatalmud Dovacha Zutfila, Asmachtihi. So the Posik is clearly talking about Asiyas HaMitzvahs, and that the Ramba calls a Sifri. There's no raya from that there's a mitzvah of Tefillah. Just as asmachta ba'almo, and asmachta can't be a makor for a mitzvah. Okay. Then the Ramban does something amazing. O loima shemichlal ho'avoida shenilmoi teira Ushenispalil Elov Be'es Hatzois, the Torah and Tefillah Be'es Sorah, V'tiyeh Einenu V'libeinu Elov Levadoi Ke'enei Ha'avodim El Yad Adoneim. So let's start again. So he says, so it says, Oloima, Shemachlal Avoida, Shenu Moitera, Ushnispal Elov, Be'es Hatzoros. V'tiyena einenu v'libeinu elov yisala. Is he trying? I just occurred to me now. I'm not even just einenu v'libeinu. Is he trying to interpret b'chol levavchem b'chol nafshechem? The reason why it's tefillah that we're involved with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, both in our lave and this is the Eis Sorah. That's how we notice Eis Sorah, because that's a time that our lave is kosher ba'avodah, that we only understand that it's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is an Eis Sorah. Ke'enei avodim el yad adoneim. Oh, now let's just go slowly. V'zehu in Kenyan shekosu v'chisavo milchoma be'artzchem ha'atzar tzor eschem v'arisem b'chatzoitzreis v'niskartem v'nei Hashem Elokeichem v'hi mitzvah al kol tzoro v'tzoro shetovo al hatzibor litzoik lefon lebetfilo ubesruah. This he's really canning what's mitzvah nun tes, okay? But mitzvah nun tes in Rambam is a mitzvah tkiba chatzreitzes, and it just happens to be the time Yitzayik. However, Mishnah Torah, the Ram learns in Hilchos Tinius, in the Protei Mitzvahs, and in Perek Avos Aleph, it's a mitzvah of Zo'aka together, coupled with Tefillah. Litz oik lefonov, b'tefillah u'b'truah. V'hu ha'inyan shebei Shlomo alav hasholem, k'mo shekosuv b'heyotzei hashamayim, v'lo yeh motor, uksiv rov ki yeh b'lo deve, ki yeh shidofon, yerokoin, arbe, chasil, ki yeh, ki yotzel, yetzel lo yoivo, oivoi, b'eretz shorov, kol negev, kol machlo, kol tfilas, kol tchino, asher yiyeh b'chol odom, l'chol amcho Yisrael, asher yedo ish neger levovoy, uforas kapov, he holds his head, points his hands out, el habayis hazeh. So what happened over here? It is true. There's a mitzvah be'ez Sorah kilu to be tzoyek and to have truah. But what's he comparing it to? Because if it's that mitzvah, so how is he saying there's a mitzvah over here? So what I think happened over here is the mitzvah is talking about Soros HaTzibur. Whatever it is. But there's another case of Soros HaYochid. And here, the Ramban says, that's the mitzvah of Tefillah, of the B'chol of Avchem, B'chol Nafshechem. And that's the Pshat in the Sifri. And Shlomo Melech reflects both of them. Because Shlomo Melech talks about Magef and all these things, Soros HaTzibur, Yeroko in Arbe, Chosil, Oivoy, B'shar al kol shov, kol nega, kol machal, that's individual. Kol tefillah, kol tchina, asher yeh l'chol ha'odam, any individual person. And also, l'chol amcha Yisrael, asher yedu ish nega levovoy. And each one has his own personal tzara. Ufos kapov el habayis hazeh. So the Ramban has over here is there's a mitzvah of tefillah be'ez Sorah of the tzibur, and there's a mitzvah of tefillah za'aka on the individual be'ez Sorah. And here, there's no problem, because all the kasha, the Ramban, all the cases, the person is in a regular situation, and he has in front of him kriyishma, tefillah, what it is. So certainly, tefillah is the rabbanon. But when it's a Sorah, there's a tefillah deraisa. And that you have to be mafsik. And that about Keri would daven. And all the different Yehuda wouldn't wait 30 days. And that's a deraisa. And that is an avodah. He says, Shemechlal hu avodah, that to do two mitzvahs and to be entwined with HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you're doing the mitzvah. Totally, he's Balil, Elov, Le'es HaTzoros, V'tzien Einenu, V'libenu, Elov, Levadoi, Kein Avodim El Yad Adonaihem. Okay, good, say. So, even though he denies tefillah as a, in the regular sense of the word, should be mitzvah deraisa, he at the moment is a suffix whether it's an asmachta, but if you say it's not an asmachta, there is a mitzvah for a tefillah be'isara. And if you say it's an asmachta, all you basically have from the pasuk of all the b'chol v'avchem is that there's an inyan of asiyas mitzvahs bekavana with suya. So that's what we have so far. Ukvar doshu oid sham b'sifri. This is important. We have Eliezer ben Yaakov oimer uli ovdoi b'chol levavchem uv'chol nafshchem ma talmud loimo v'lo kvar nemo b'chol levavcho uv'chol nafshecho uv'chol meodecho. Which is very odd because he's comparing the second Pasha Krishma to the first Pasha Krishma, and the first Pasha Krishma is talking about Abbas Hashem. So what's the comparison? We don't understand. In the case of Ava, it's liyochid. V'kan b'tzibur. Kan l'talmud. V'kan l'ma'aseh. So I said, I assume the Talmud is uli ovdoi, that's the avodah, and the l'ma'aseh is to express Yahweh wherever you express it. Okay. Yoimer shenetztavinu la'avoid Hashem b'chol levovenu b'lim b'teirosoi u'b'asiyas mitzvosov. This asiyas mitzvosov, what's b'chol levovenu? So I assume what he's doing is going back and saying that the Sifri supports his Ika Kavanas HaPosik, that the Posik is talking about Asiyas HaMitzvahs be Kavanah Ritzuya. Okay. So now we have a question as before. If you want to understand of whether there's a mitzvah of tefillah here, because the Ramban originally had two options. There's a mitzvah of tefillah based or he starts it's an asmachta. But he himself says that the ikar pshat in the posuk is avos is asiyas hamitzvahs b'kavanah ritzuya. So I assume maybe since Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov supports his pshat that there's an avodah of b'chol levavchem and asiyas hamitzvahs. La'avoid Hashem yis'al b'chol libeinu b'limu teirosoi u'basiyas mitzvosov. So then you should mitzadeh, since the love of b'chol levavchem is the Chazal are going like the Ikar Pshat and Posuk, so you should assume the other drasha uli ovdei b'tefila u'b'teirosoi is only an asmachta ba'alma. And maybe that's why that's his conclusion. So then, let's go to the end. I'll come back for a second. he says at the end, V'im ulai yiyeh midrashom betfila ika, it calls it a medrash. If you can imagine, it's possible that it's not an asmachta, there's something real about it. Ika minatera nimne oisoi binyonoi shalorav. It means that the Rambam, we can count it in the Rambam's minyan, but he's not ready to accept that because the pasuk is talking about ulov the b'chol nafshem, vavchem b'chol nafshechem. It means kavonu itzuya, and he has Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov to support that. So you have a sifri, which you could have a suffix if you look at it on its own, whether it's an asmacht or not, and he assumes a priori, you should assume it's asmachta. And even if you don't assume it's asmachta, you should assume it's asmachta, because another sifri against it, and the pashta pasuk's not like that. So he's ready to say, maybe according to the Ramba, you should count it. Because you can't count what the Ramba counts, because the problem is of the time element. We don't know anything. So comes the Ramban and says, no. V'im ula yiyeh midrashim betfila ika min ha'Torah nimne oisei b'minyanoi in Ram's min shel horav v'noima she mitzvah le'es hatzoros shenamin shehu yizboach v'yis'aleh shomei tefila v'hu hamatzil min hatzoros b'tefila u'tza'or za'oka. See here, he has a suffix to accept the Rambam. He himself doesn't accept the Rambam. How do we know he doesn't accept the Rambam? Because in the at the end of the Minyan HaMitzvahs, the Ramban, where he talks about all the shichas of this and shicha that, he says, V'ato im tovin kol mashiv kasavnu in the in shichas, and after shichas alavim, he has v'ato im tovin kol mashiv kasavnu b'dinei hamitzvos aseh tire shesalaknu mecheshboinoi shel horav mitzvah hey and mitzvah zayin, the mitzvah tefila and the mitzvah shmo tishaveya. So the Ramban knocks it out. But he says, maybe, according to the Rambam, you shouldn't have the mitzvah which he has. Maybe you should have this mitzvah of tefillah beisor. But then for some reason, originally, he canned it as shenilmod dispalel shemechlal hu avodah Shenilmoid Teira v'nispalil Elov be'es hatzoros. Elov be'es hatzoros. We don't know what the Lumot Teira is exactly. V'tien einenu v'libenu Elov levadoi. So the avodah is to be Elov Yisala. We don't know what the avodah is exactly. Beis hatzoros. Then he says at the end, he talks shenamin. Shenamin shehu yisborach v'yis'al shomei tefila tu hamatzil min hatzoros. Maybe. You see, you have a problem over here because the way he phrases it in the first caption before he comes to the end, he's ready to say it's not an asmachta, but the mitzvah is a mitzvah of tefillah, but tefillah beisorah. And then at the end, the captions are different. They're different interpretation. Shenamin. So the question is, the end, he means Shia mitzvah leis hatzo shenamin shehu yis'ale shehu yisboch v'yis'ale shmei tefillah b'tiyam v'hu amatzu min hatzois b'tefillah v'zoko, and we shouldn't pray, we just believe it. Or maybe but then he said it's a machlokes, we don't know what happened. Maybe it's in addition to what it was before. And since he says there's an element of leiv, and the law of the b'chol of avchem, that element of leiv requires an emunah that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is the poidu matzil, b'beis hatzoros. Maybe that's what he means. Okay. Now, next. Now let's continue. V'chein zo sheshnuya shom v'oisa tavodu. So there's one drasha from Mula Avdai. And Mula Avdai, you have what he learns the ikap shat, which is asiyas HaMitzvah kavanu etzuya. And then you have the Sefer which the Ramba quotes, and then you have Elazar and Yaakov that it's talking about avoida b'chol leiv, shelavoid Hashem yis'al b'chol levovenu, b'limu torasenu u'b'asayis mitzvaysav. And that's what he thinks is kan Talmud. Okay. V'chein, now there's a different Sefer which the Ram quotes. Shenu yeshom, v'oisa tavoidu, ivduhu b'sarosai, ivduhu b'mikdashai. Pirushai, loy meshiavdu oisai, b'mikdashai, b'avoidus hakobonos. Vashir v'shtachavo. That's ivdu b'mikdashai, not like the Rambam learns that it's tefillah, but it's avoided mikdash. Shom moisiv al avoidus hamitzvos. Ivdu b'terasai is avoidus hamitzvos. And if the mikdash is the avodas hamikdash, lefi she'oma hakos v'achar Hashem Elokeichem telechu v'ois tiro v'es mitzvosav tishmoru v'dosh shom b'sifri es mitzvos tishmoru zu mitzaseh v'kol zishmo liten loisaseh v'kol neviov. V'hine asiyas hamitzvos kulon kvar nema l'kach doshu v'ois tavodu l'avodas hamikdash. B'ferish klal haposik yivdu b'terasai kol atos yivdu b'terasai yivdu b'mikdashay lo yimeshetziva tchila yivdu b'terasai kloima b'asiyas hamitzvos kulon mereisha. That means either b'terasai is asiyas hamitzvos, it's not Talmud Torah, and the other one it is. Mereisha the call. V'tziva ivduhu b'mikdash shoshay min v'yoyse tavodu loima ki b'zeh kuloi ti avodeseinu shleimo elov yis'aleh. With asiyas hamitzvos and mikdash. Okay. Hine heim. Hine heim mitzvos kololos. All these drushes Uliovdoi are about Kol Torah Kula, as the Ramba pointed out. So there shouldn't be a minyan mitzvahs. I'm about to do something amazing now. Habvinei shetziva oisonu beposik b'chol levavchem be'inyan chodosh. This idea of asiyas hamitzvahs b'kavona l'tzuya, Leo is called livovenu miyuchad elov yisale be'inyan asiyas hamitzvahs kasher pirashti yitochen. He has now a possibility, tochen, shetovo hamitzvah hazois b'cheshbon ramach hamitzvah aseh. Me'il shemitzvah aseh avasiyas kol hamitzvahs b'kavon l'tzuya. U'minatam hazeh etzlo, or it could be it's etzleinu, it's Yuchum Polas, as he's talking about himself. Lo yimnu hamitzvah kolos. We don't count mitzvah kolos kula. Mipnei shekva nimnu biproton. Here the Ramban does an amazing thing. And this is also not for us now, but it's a very interesting thing. There are two different shoshim in minyan mitzvahs. The shorish revi'i and shorish chi. Shorish revi'i, the Ram says that a mitzvah is not minyan mitzvahs. And Shorish Chi says that if you have a mitzvah which is repeated many times, you only count it one time. You count the finyon eter. So a priori, or not a priori, according to the Rambam, since the Shorish Dalid precedes Shorish test and is not independent of Shorish test, the fact that you're not, the reason why you're not moina mitzvah kula is not because it's a kefil, because it's a repeat to say do tayag mitzvahs. It says do tayag mitzvahs, which you're already mitzvah on. The Ramban says that the reason for Shorish Dalid and Shorish test is the same. Uminatam hazeh etzleinu, or it's etzlo. Lo yimnu hamitzvah kolos mipnei shekfa nimnu beplaton. Ukmo shelo nimne hakefel mitzvah min hamitzvos pa'amayim shalosh bifrat. Even if a mitzvah which repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number of times, you only count it once. El achas kain loinimna kfelon, which is the mitzvah kol kol. It's only kefel b'chlal el achas. V'ulam, however, im kodesh b'kfelon, if there's a new inyan and it's not just the kefel, there's something new nuance, something new. So you can count a mitzvah which is kula if there's a new nuance. So what's the Ramban talking about? L'cheir, what he's saying is that you can count because there's a new nuance in the Avodas Hashem, the Avodas HaMitzvahs. The mitzvah should be b'kavona v'tzuya shleima. But it's interesting, the Ramban only says yitochen. It's possible. So you can imagine one could count the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah l'kayim. Kol ha-mitzvahs are kavona v'tzuya. However, Rabbi Yisai, the Ramban doesn't count it. It's not in the mitzvah shalav, mitzvah aseh. He doesn't add it in the minyan. But the Ramban leaves us clueless we have no understanding of why he doesn't count it. Is it because he disagrees with his new definition of Shurish Revi? He only suggested over the count it, but he rejects it. We have no clue. Okay. Now, let me do the following. Just add something over here now. According to the Rambam, the mitzvah tefillah is avodah because of the tzuras tefillah. That you have shevach, bakoshe voidah, and huchus tefillah in Perek Aleph Halacha Beis. Chiyuv mitzvah zo kachi she'ei odem mischanin u'mispalel b'chol yoyim u'magid shvocho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ואחר כך שואל צרוכוב, שהוא צורך להם, בבקשו, בתחינו, ואחר כך נויסד שבח וידוע להשם ישראל, להשם על הטבע שהשפיע לו כל אחד כפי כוחו. However, the Ramban, on the side that there is a mitzvah, the tefillah beis sorah, which he's saying according to the Rambam, the tefillah beis sorah is zo'aka. Zoka means bakosha pshuta. There's no introduction and no epilogue. Just bakosha. As Eliyahu said, Aneni Hashem Aneni. As the Gemara Tiny says in Yud Zayin of an Aleph, that's Tzaka. Rashi and Tillin. Anois Oni Sakas Dal Kol Aniya Shebemikol Loshen Tzaka Aneni Hashem Aneni, and that's it. That's what Tzaka is. There's no introduction, there's no shevach, there's no idah. It's just pure, unadulterated cry to the Rebbeinu Shalom, which is an expression of his inner pain. Rashi says in Shmos, Perek Aleph, Posuk Tezvav, I'm poor, Loshen Tza'aka, Kumo Kioleda F.R. It's the tza'aka of a woman on the birthing stool. It's a cry. And therefore, that's to be Zaka is one kima chatzaitzais. It's not a verbal thing. It's a cry, both by blowing the shofar and the crying. The blowing the chatzaitzais and the crying. The Rav, remember the Shiur and Tainis discussed barichas that in Za'aka there's no tzuras at tefillah, and it's like a behemoth tzorek al tzora. Rashi Mishlei nehimo li'ari ushkika l'doiv shneim loshen tza'aka. Okay. So that's what we have. Now, the end of mitzvah hey, the Ram says, come on, I just want to show you something interesting. Kamo shebei shloimeh. And the interesting thing, if you go back to the Ramban is quoting Shlomo for Tefillah Beisara. He says, "B'tru v'hi v'u inyan shebei shloimeh olav hasholom kamo shekosuv behotz hashamayim v'lo yeh motor uksiv rov ki yeh ba'aretz v'chulei v'chulei." Correct? So what's the Rambam? Has the Rambam quote Shlomo? What's going on? So I don't think there's kashas or any kashas over here. Because you look at the psukim, it goes like this. There are two sets of psukim that are whole different motifs over here. In Melachim Aleph, Perek Ches, goes like this: Chof Ches Talamed Aleph, Ufonisa as Tfilas Avdecho v'el Tchinosoi Hashem Elokai v'shmoi el Arino v'el Tfilo Asher Avdecho mispal lefonecho hayoim liyois einecho pesuchois el habayis hazeh laila v'yoim el hamokom asher omalto yiyeh shmi shom lishmoy el hatfilo asher yispal avdecho el hamokom hazeh v'shomato el tchinas avdecho v'yamcha Yisrael asher yispalu el hamokom hazeh v'yato tishma el hamokom shivtecho el hashamayim v'shamata v'salachta. So he says, Yispal asher yispal avdecho el hamokom hazeh, which is talking about Oshet Tefillah. The Ramban quotes from the next part of Tefillah Shlomo, where he says, in from Posik Lamed Hey to Lamed Ches Be'erz HaShamayim v'lo yeh motor v'chulei kol neger kol machlo kol tefilo kol tchino asher yiyeh l'chol ha'odom l'chol amcha Yisrael shi'yado ish neger levoboy. And this is where he learns about tefilo be'ez soro even by Yochid. But the Be'ez Shlomo in the Rambam, which Ki'ilu is since Shlomo said this, we interpret if Dobe Mikdoshoy is Derech Mikdoshoy since Tefillah. But without that, we wouldn't have had it. And the second part of Shlomo is talking about Stam, a person davening, about Tchinos, about Eitzah. There's a slight problem here. Is that l'cheira, it's very clear from Shlomo Melech that a tefillah of a tza'aka be'ez soro should be directed to the Mikdash. And I didn't find any place in the Rambam that there's discussion about this. Okay. That's what I would like to tell you in Ramban. I just mentioned, I thought, we go through this, but the amazing thing is, everyone talks about a Machlokas Rambam and Ramban. There's no such thing. The Ramban has no mitzvah over here, and he's just suggesting that if you're going to do it, since there's no with regular tefillah, there's no time cap. We don't know exactly when you should do it, how you should do it. If you're going to say there's a mitzvah, it's only the tefillah based solo. Okay, next. Now, I don't know if we pointed this out last week, that when we were talking about, let's just wrap up a little bit about the ובשמו תשבע, that according to the Rambam, ובשמו תשבע, there's a mitzvah base whenever you have a tzorch of shmua, there's a mitzvah to be nishba b'shem Hashem. Okay. And the Rambam is mechadish, not only is a mitzvah to be nishba b'shem Hashem, there's an Aseh to be nishba in a nivra. Which the problem is you're giving the nivra some amitos, because by praying, or here certainly in we'll get to this soon. The Rambam, I don't know, I hope so, that the Rambam compares this to Mishtat Shem Shemayim Dovacha, and we'll get to this, but the interesting thing is we pointed out, but it's even more than that, there were two Maduas over here in what the Isa was. And he talks about Nishba and Shemesh. So in Ibn Iyov, which probably was an earlier edition of the Rambam, the Rambam says that you can be Nishba b'Shemesh in elliptical construction if you have kavana to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You say Shemesh, but you mean God. Similarly, if you say Moshe and you mean God, it's also mutter. The Rambam that we have is a whole different story. The fact you have in mind God when you say Nivra, that's not enough to be matir. There's still an Isa. You have to have either with something you say to point to an elliptical construction, you mean God. You have to say Amitas Hashemesh, Amunas Hashemesh, which is referring to the Adon who created the Shem, which is God. Or he adds this, which wasn't, he adds the words Emun or Amitas, that's the Arabic for it, in Ibn Tibin and Kapach. And also, there's another phrase which wasn't there. In Ibn Tibin, Kapach, V'zeh, he says, V'zeh yodua, shanish b'yirtz aloyma, v'elokei Moshe. Kilo is an umdana. The only heter of a nivra is either an umdana min Hashem, as by Moshe Rabbeinu, or you say something, elliptical construction, you say Amunas Hashemesh, which is another reference to saying, a way of another saying that you mean God. But without that, Kavon alone is not matir. In Madua Kamo, the Ram held the Kavon was matir, and that's Ibn Iyov. Okay. Next. V'al Hazeh, so let's go on. V'al Hazeh, תשבע ומנסינו בשם מוישה רבנו, כדי לזכבד בשמו, וזה ידוע. וזה ידוע שהנשבע ירצה אלוהימה באלוקי משה. ידוע. That's what we said. This is only later he had this. Okay. Okay, now, aber כשאין נשבע סוי וכך, ונשבע ביחס מן הנברואים, והוא סויver, and the interesting so that he has in Sefer, he has this Arabic takada, which he has in the in Mitzvah Aleph, which we discussed by Richus. It means he's meshuchna b'daitoi. It's a firm belief or firm knowledge. So with firm belief, ki l'dova ahu amitus ba'atzmoi. Achi shova boy, and that's a shiurim in his firm belief. Hine ova v'shitav shem shamayim v'dova acher. Shebo kabolo kol mishtativ shem shamayim v'dova acher is nekam and oilam. See, here is something which a priori doesn't make any sense. Mishtativ shem shamayim v'dova acher, he says two things together. And the Ram, here he says only one thing. So, what the Ram is saying, which is an amazing, amazing thing, that this Mishtativ Shem Shemayim B'Dova Acher is a chiddush that it's also. Because maybe since you say God, maybe it's not so bad that you mention the Nivra. But if you're only Nishma, it's simply also. However, that's what he's doing. We'll have to explain a little more. But the amazing thing is, in Mishnah Torah, if you open up in Perek Yud Aleph of Hilchos Shavuos, Halacha Aleph, he says, is a mitzvah say, and the mitzvah say, if you recall, we mentioned last week, is only by Shavuos Dayanim. Okay. Then he says, there's an Isa say, and the Isa say is Mishtat Shem Shemayim B'Dova Acher. The whole discussion which he has over here about Nishba B'Nivra is completely absent. It means the whole Isa is to be Nishba V'Hashem V'Dova Acher. Nishba and the Dova Acher, we don't know any Isa B'Cham. Amazing thing. Which we'll have to talk about. That's a discussion itself. What happened to it? But the interesting thing is, in Sefer HaMitzvah, he's using Mishtativ Shir Shemayim V'Dova Acher as a raya that there's an Isa of Nishba B'Nivra, where you have, where you clear, have, when you have in mind that the Nivra is, has the Amitus B'Chmoy. And the Raya is Mishtat Shem Shemayim V'Dova Acher. In Mishnah Torah, it's just the opposite. There's no Isa of Mishtat Nishba B'Nivra. The whole Isa is only Mishtat Shem Shemayim V'Dova Acher. And then, to add insult to injury, the Rambam interprets that Mishtat Shem Shemayim V'Dova Acher is Dafka Derech Shvur. This is quoted in two places. It's quoted in Sukkah and in Sanhedrin, Sukkah Memhei, Amud Beis, Sanhedrin, Sama Gimel, Amud Aleph, and there's no mention whatsoever in any way that has anything to do with Shvur. The Gemara in Sukkah is talking about Mizbeach and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just in a sentence. And because of that, the Ramba used to say that he had a problem of the songs we sing on Simchas Torah, of Moshe Rabbeinu, Nuboy Shalom, any sentence, and it's Sanhedrin, he's talking about Avodah Zarah. And so Mitzvah will put this up next week.